Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation. My name is Kingsley Nkanta and today we'll be looking at a very modern ethical dilemma through a classic philosophical lens. Our topic is duty, reason and artificial intelligence, a deontological assessment of submitting AI generated academic work. We will explore whether it is morally permissible for a student to use artificial intelligence to complete their academic requirements. To guide us through this evaluation, I have structured our roadmap into four clear stages. First, we will establish the specific real-world scenario and formulate the underlying personal rule or maxim behind it. Second, we will introduce the core concept of Immanuel Kant's deontological ethics. Third, we will systematically put our scenario through Kant's three strict formulations of the categorical imperative. Finally, we will arrive at a definitive moral verdict on structural integrity of academic evaluation. Let's start with the basics of Kant's framework. Kantian ethics is strictly non-consequentialist. This means that when deciding if an action is right or wrong, we do not look at the results or the outcomes. Instead, morality lies entirely in whether the act conforms to rational duty. According to Kant, an action only has true moral worth if it is executed from what he calls a good will, meaning you choose to do the right thing simply because it is your moral duty, not because it is convenient, easy, or profitable. Action driven purely by self-interest carry absolutely no moral credit. Now let's define our exact purpose. The scenario involves a student facing a tight deadline who chooses to submit an assignment generated entirely by an AI writer, passing it off as their own original work. To evaluate this ethically, we must uncover the hidden personal rule driving the student. In philosophy, we call this a maxim, which Kant defines as the subjective principle of volition or simply the personal rule that drives your action. For these students, the operational maxim is I may submit machine-generated writing as my own personal work whenever it saves me time or guarantees a passing grade. Let's test this rule. Kant's first test is the formula of universal law. His famous rule states, act only according to the maxim whereby you can at the same time rule that it should become a universal law. To explain this simply to an audience new to philosophy, Kant is asking us to perform a thought experiment. Imagine if your private, personal rule suddenly became a mandatory law of nature that everyone in the universe has to follow. He provides two benchmarks to test this, a contradiction in conception, which asks if the universalized rule logically destroys its own purpose, and a contradiction in the will, which asks if a rational person should actually tolerate living in such world. So what happens when we apply the or this formulation Imagine a world where every single student universally submitted AI written essays. Instantly, the entire concept of academic grading and assessment completely collapses. Grades will immediately cease to signal real knowledge, effort, or skills. The only reason a cheating student can successfully pass off an AI paper right now is because they are acting like a parasite. They rely on the instructor, believing that students' assignments are generally genuine. If everyone does this, the illusion is broken, because the maxim logically destroys the very institution of grading it tries to exploit. It fails the test, resulting in a fatal contradiction in conception. Kant's second formulation shifts our focus to human dignity and is known as the formula of humanity. It commands us to treat humanity whether in our own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. Let's break down this technical vocabulary. Using someone as a mere means treating another human being as a passive object, instrument, or tool to get what you want. without transparent rational consent. On the flip side, choosing someone as an end means recognizing and actively respecting their intrinsic dignity and capacity for independent reason. When we apply this to our AI scenario, the moral failure is deep and multi-layered. First, you're actively deceiving your instructor. You're exploiting their professional labor, their limited time, and their trust as a main instrument to generate a great credential for yourself. Second, there's a clear consent violation. The evaluator cannot genuinely consent to access a machine algorithm under the false pretense of evaluating human growth. Finally, Kant argued we have a strict moral duty to cultivate our own natural and moral talents. By sourcing your thinking to an algorithm, you are treating your own cognitive capacity as a mere tool for utility rather than respecting yourself as an intellectual end. Kant's third and final formulation introduces a beautifully idealized concept, the kingdom of ends. He states that every rational agent must act as if they were, though their maxims always a law-making member in a political commonwealth. Imagine a systematic, ideal community where every single member is both a citizen who creates the moral laws and a subject who willingly obeys them. Under this test, an action is only permissible if your personal rule could be actively voted into law by a community of autonomous, self-governing legislators who care about collective human reason and moral progress. When we bring this into academic environment, we must ask, will a rational lawmaker vote to allow AI fraud? Absolutely not. Submitting AI work introduces systematic deceit into our educational commonwealth. It's completely rupturing the mutual contract of intellectual growth that exists between teachers and students. To wrap up our structural analysis, let's review our findings through the summary deontological magic or matrix. As you can see, our scenario follows all three mandatory Kantian tests. Under the universal law, it creates a logical contradiction that makes grading meaningless. Under humanity as an end, it uses a instructor as a mere grading tool and devalues the student's own intellect. And under the kingdom of ends, it corrupts the shared legislative values and systematic trust of the academic forum. The verdict is definitive. The action is fundamentally immoral. To open the floor for further learning, I want to leave my peers and colleagues with a critical reflection prompt for our discussion forum. Consider this scenario. If an educational institution implements mandatory flawless AI detection software that completely eliminates the need for baseline trust, does a student's sneaky submission of undetected AI work still violate Kant's formulations, or has the technical nature of the system fundamentally shifted? I look forward to reading your insights and responses in the forum. To conclude, here is a bibliography and core course readings, including classic translations of Immanuel Kant, alongside contemporary ethical commentary from scholars like Hill, O'Neill, and Wood, which served as the academic foundation for this deontological framework. Thank you so much for your time and attention.